All right, guys, there's another week we can do. SOCEprep.com, Travis Britt here, SOCEprep.com. These questions are off of my website. I offer study guides for SOCE, the State Officer Certification exam, if you're transferring into Florida from another state or if you're in a basic recruit training program. As you can see, the time is ticking up here. I made this as close as possible to the real thing that you're going to face at Pearson VUE when you sit to take the State Officer Certification exam with the expectation of getting an 80% or higher so you can pass it and certify with the FDLE. So let's look at this question real quick. It says a police officer notices an individual while on patrol that matches the description of a home invasion robbery suspect, so a pretty serious crime. When the individual notices the police officer's marked vehicle, the individual jumps behind a parked car in a furtive fashion, right? So we got a guilt-laden factor right there, furtive fashion. They're hiding, right? They don't want to be contacted by the police, is what it sounds like. It appears as if the individual did not want to be contacted by the police, and the police officer orders the individual to stop and show his or her hands, right? So open-ended scenario. We got to plug it in down here as far as the choices are going. I told you our test-taking strategies. We are going to eliminate bad answer choices. We're going to hold on to contenders. So what does this look like? The stop is constitutionally sound, so it was a good stop, right? What do we stop people under the Fourth Amendment, right? We have to make sure that any contact we have, the three types of contact, are not violating the Fourth Amendment, which says there's no unreasonable search and seizure, right? If people are minding their own business and they're not breaking the law, they shouldn't be bothered by the government unless they want to be bothered by the government. So it says the stop is constitutionally sound and the individual may be frisked for weapons per Terry v. Ohio. It is reasonable to be suspicious that the individual may be armed and dangerous. So what are we looking here? Fourth Amendment. I know Terry v. Ohio is a case that talks about Fourth Amendment. It says that the stop is constitutionally sound, that they can be frisked for weapons per Terry v. Ohio, which the requirement for that is what? I have to have an investigative stop, so a Tier 2 stop. I have to have reasonable articulable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot during the time of the encounter. And at the time of the encounter that I had very strong belief or reasonable articulable suspicion that the individual was armed and dangerous at the time of the contact. So I'm going to hold on to that as a contender because it's a possible, right? Not sure, though. I'm not just going to pick it because I think it's right. It just sounds good. So let's go through and see if we can eliminate anything. B says the officer may attempt to make a consensual encounter based on his or her mere suspicion, but has no authority to detain the individual to confirm or deny a hunch or a gut feeling, right? So let's try to make sense of this. It's all over the place, right? So we're talking about stopping individuals on the street. We've got three types of encounters that we have. And Florida looks at it, they break down the three encounters and they call them three different things, right? So Tier 1 would be a consensual or a mutual encounter, which anyone at any time is free to go, right? So you're at the gas station at 7-Eleven. You say, hey, dude, how was that game last night? And they say, I don't talk to police. You leave them alone, right? Or if they're like, oh, that game was awesome, it was great, yada, yada, yada. So it's consensual, it's mutual. There is no element of coercion to speak to police or the government, right? The second one, Tier 2, what do we have to have? We have to have reasonable articulable suspicion to make an investigative stop. Is the citizen free to go? They are not free to go, right? We have a reasonable amount of time as a law enforcement officer to confirm or deny the suspicions that we had. So that's Tier 2, investigative stop. And then 3 is probable cause. That set of facts or circumstances which would lead a reasonable and prudent person to believe that the person in question did or was about to commit said crime. It's more than mere suspicion, but it's less than absolute certainty. And I always think of it as a percentage. I got a 51% chance that this individual just committed this crime, but it didn't have to be 100 or even 99. But it has to meet the level of 51 or higher, right? So more than mere suspicion, right? It's not just a gut feeling or my instinct, more than mere suspicion, but it's less than absolute certainty. And why is that okay, right? Because we got checks and balances in our government, right? So the legislative branch makes the law, the executive branch enforces the law, the judicial branch interprets the law, right? Are they going to prison for the rest of their life because a police officer found probable cause? No. Right? We're going to kick it over, checks and balances, to the judicial branch, and they're going to interpret whether or not my judgment was sound or not. And what are they going to do? They're going to convict or they're going to dismiss the case, right? So with that being said, the officer may attempt to make a consensual encounter, right? So it's free to go, free to go, free to go. And in the question, the stimulus, they told us that this individual matched the description of a home invasion robbery, which is a forcible felony, and that they are trying to evade contact with the police once they have identified, hey, they match the description of a suspect. All right, what do police do? Should they contact suspects? Yes or no, right? Common sense says yes, correct? Are there some measurements in there for what is this? Is it a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, right? I've got reasonable articulable suspicion for sure. Absolutely. So they're not free to go. So it's not a consensual encounter. I'm going to go ahead and scratch that based on that, right? C says individual could be detained based on the Marchman Act. All right, so this is to play at your knowledge on what a Marchman Act is. Florida does have a civil means to detain individuals per Marchman Act if you can articulate two things, which is they have a very serious substance abuse problem, and that if you don't do something at the time, that an individual is going to harm someone else or themselves, right? And both of those two prongs have to be satisfied for a Marchman Act. It's a lot like a Baker Act, right? When you're talking about mental illness, but it has to do with substance, right? So anything in the stimulus of the question that says anything about narcotics, alcohol, anything to do with drugs whatsoever, drugs, alcohol, stimulants, yada, 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 yada. No, there was not. Anything to do with mental health? No. Right, that would be a Baker Act. If it's mental health, Marchman Act is going to be substances. Anything about suicide or harming themselves or harming someone else? No. Right. I don't like this. I'm going to scratch it off the board. Right. D says the Fourth Amendment does not have to be considered when the crime is by nature a forcible felony. Guys, the Fourth Amendment always has to be considered. The Fourth Amendment always has to be considered. The Fourth Amendment always has to be considered. I'm not even going to spend any more time on that. Scratch that off the board. It's hogwash, right? So we've narrowed it down, right? We eliminated 3, and we have one contender. What was the contender? The stop is constitutionally sound based on the fact that the individual warranted an investigative stop, right? So a tier 2 stop. They had reasonable articulable suspicion because they matched the description of a crime that had just occurred. And what did they give us? They gave us furtive actions. They gave us guilt-laden behavior, right? So now my tier 2 just got a lot stronger, right? So with that being said, a forcible felony, home invasion, robbery, right? Very possible that they're armed. What am I going to do? Terry v. Ohio, I'm going to frisk that person and make sure they don't have a weapon in their pocket. I'm not going to go digging in their pockets, but I'm going to frisk them real quick. And if anything is what? Immediately recognizable, immediately recognizable, immediately recognizable, I can recover it if it's contraband, correct? All right, so A was the correct answer. A was the correct answer. I'm going to pick it. I'm going to be mindful of my time. And I am going to move on. Again, guys, it's SOCEprep.com. If you like the way this went down, check me out. I've got some free resources over at SOCEprep.com as far as a study guide if you just want to do it old school and dig through the books. But I make it pretty easy for you if you sign up and you purchase my study guide. I'm going to walk you through everything you need to do to pass the SOCE, right? So again, SOCEprep.com, Travis Britt. Thank you guys for your time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.